Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our second TMA virtual legislative briefing of 2023, where we will be discussing the paid leave bills and other legislation moving through the Illinois General Assembly this session. My name is Rich Carter. I'm TMA's government affairs consultant, and I'll be the moderator for today's briefing. We're joined by TMA state lobbyist David Curtin, as well as a very special guest, State Representative Dan Ugaste of Geneva, who serves as the Republican spokesperson on the House Labor and Commerce Committee, which considered several of the paid leave bills TMA has been tracking. Good morning, David and Rep. Ugaste.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. We're going to spend the next half hour discussing the outlook of legislative action in the Illinois House this session, its potential impact on TMA members. At the end of the program, TMA members will have an opportunity to ask written questions of Representative Ugaste by typing them into the Q&A tab on the Zoom control panel. Now I'll turn it over to TMA state lobbyist David Curtin, who will introduce our special guest and get his thoughts on the legislative session to date. The floor is yours, David.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Representative, and especially since a committee meeting popped up at 8 a.m. just at the same time we're going to be doing this meeting, and you made arrangements to be here, and so we really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, and thanks.
Since we're halfway or almost halfway through session, the small and mid-sized manufacturing issues are being debated. Our TMA members are interested in how things are going. Before you talk about how things are going, what can you tell us about your background and that sort of thing?
Sure, a little bit about myself. So I am a third-term representative here in Springfield. I represent District 65 in the state. It is I live in Geneva, so I always do things from the perspective of my city, but it has basically been at the bottom and the center of the district ever since I've represented it. It starts, Geneva is the furthest point south now. It goes over all the way out west of 47 to covers Elburn, Campton Hills, Lily Lake, moves up into some unincorporated area. We don't go much north of Route 20. In the north, I have parts of West Elgin, the western portion, South Elgin, the town, and a large part of St. Charles. The only part of Geneva and St. Charles I don't have is the old section of my district after the current redistricting, which is the center of the town. They sort of pulled me out with a cone to the western portion and took it from there. So I have a good area. It's a great area. It has a lot going for it, as many people know, anyone who's ever been there. Everything from manufacturing to retail and commercial restaurants, it really does quite well. We're one of the very fortunate areas of the state, and actually we're one of the few that in the last census saw population growth over those 10 years. My background, so prior to joining the legislature, I had never held an elected office before. This is the first one I ran for. I have been an attorney doing workers' compensation defense, primarily related litigation as well, for about 35 years.
Interesting. Well, I'm sure you've had the opportunity to get acquainted with the small and mid-sized manufacturers in your district. What can you tell us about them?
So we have some great manufacturing. I mean, we have one that I visited not far from my house. Don't want to call anyone out by name necessarily. It's Burgess Norton. I'll just mention them only because, like I said, they're a block away from me. I've lived in the same house almost 30 years. They're a great neighbor. They really are. They're wonderful. And they have a lot going on there and always seem to be busy. So very happy about that. Also have met with some of the other local ones within my area. But just to add a little something more so people have an understanding of my background, I also, in my workers' compensation practice, I have defended a group called the Workers' Compensation Trust of Illinois, which is nothing but a group of small to mid-sized manufacturers, and I've represented them. I've been the lead person on the team, and lead partner for about the past 5 years or so, And prior to that, I had handled some of their cases on and off over 20 years. So, it's been anywhere from 100 to about 160 manufacturers, depending upon the point in time. So gotten to know them fairly well as well.
Wow. Well, you are the Republican spokesperson on the Labor Committee for the House, and so you've been privy to a lot of discussions on the paid family leave bills, and our members are very interested in the paid family leave issue. I know there's a lot of bills out there. They haven't made it out of committee yet, but they've been talked about and debated. So can you give us a little what your perception is, the likelihood of any paid family leave legislation moving this session?
Sure. The only paid leave bill that we've seen that really seems to be moving along, and it did just make it out of committee, is in fact the one for a person who is giving bone marrow, organ donation, or blood, and it's set up to where if they do an organ donation, it'd be 10 days of paid leave. If they're giving bone marrow, it'd be 5 days. And it's here's the issue, and it's as I discussed with the sponsor of the bill. It's a very worthy endeavor. We do want to encourage people to give blood, give bone marrow, donate organs. It's something we need to do, but to saddle the businesses that they work for with the cost of that, especially after all the paid leave that we've just experienced over the last few sessions, I just didn't think it was appropriate to do. If it's something the state wanted to finance, if it's something you wanted to look and say maybe find some way to get someone to help pay it, but it shouldn't be borne by the place that's employing the person, because while I'm sure they're very supportive of it and would work with them to give them the time off, it's yet just another cost here in Illinois. And as we know, we've already placed more mandates, costs, and taxes upon our businesses as well as our residents than we really need to in this state.
That's good. Well, thanks for standing up on that issue. I know it's pretty difficult, and since there are like 5 or 6 bills circulating out there, your sense right now, at least almost halfway through session, is that they aren't moving yet, but they could move later. Or do you have a good sense on that?
So I will say this. There have been times I thought things were dead because they hadn't passed through the committee process when they were due to, and we're actually through when they were supposed to get things out of committee. A lot of people came back with amendments that are now actually moving out, but we're at third reading deadline in the House. So I will say this: the vast majority of what hasn't passed isn't going to get through at this point. Does that mean nothing will? No, the rules I learned early on are made to be, well, I guess broken. I don't know how else to say it. The majority party in the state has a super majority, and under the rules, they can change, waive, disavow, whatever you want to call it, the rules that are in place at any given time, and they can advance bills as they want. And I've seen some bills that hadn't had a hearing, not much had happened on at the last minute, later in the session, where even in the last couple of weeks, all of a sudden start advancing through committee because they either get attached to a shell bill or something comes over and there's a cut and replace, and then it starts moving that way. But as far as the discussions I'm hearing and what people are talking about, I have yet to hear of any other paid leave bills that are probably along that path. But the best I can do is tell you this. Right. If I hear something, I'll be sure to let you know, David.
Thank you. Sure. Well, I appreciate that for our members too. And that background is very helpful, or that information is very helpful. But you've introduced a lot of workers' comp bills this session. And I just wondered if any workers' comp legislation was going to be considered, you thought, or do you think this session, whether good or bad bills? All of your bills are very good.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
Didn't know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, as far as workers' compensation legislation, the only thing that advanced was something that dealt with uninsured employers and how they can be dealt with in licensing through the Department of Insurance and IDFPR, and whether or not their licenses will be renewed. Everyone will be entitled to a hearing. No one will go without a hearing before anything is done. And there will have to be a final determination. But if there's a determination that they haven't obtained the proper workers' compensation insurance, or aren't self-insured properly, or done whatever they need to through the state, that is going to be dealt with in a way that keeps them from operating. So we'll make certain they do. And, you know, what I have found from groups like yours, as well as others I've talked to, and the companies I represent, they have no problem with that, because they've done what they're supposed to under the law. And it's an additional cost for them, and not one, you know, as because you brought it up, I know all of you know, is borne easily by these companies. It's a large expense within the state of Illinois. And there's a way to do it where we still treat our employees well, which are the subject of my bills, and yet don't cost the businesses nearly as much money. And it's a matter of trying to get those to hearing. But as far as the only bill that is really moving on work comp, that seems to be it right now. As far as my bills are concerned, unfortunately, like the last 2 sessions I've been down here, we started out, we got them out of rules, fortunately, which not all bills always make it out of rules. So that's step one. But they get to labor, and next thing I know, they're buried in a subcommittee. So unfortunately, the likelihood of anything happening isn't great, but there's always a chance of something. We're always talking to people. We're seeing what we can work out. You know, maybe if they're going to do something, they can help business out in another way, and see if we can get something going there.
Okay, thank you. Well, as the just in general, as far as any positive legislation for our members or our families out there, can you speak to any positive bills that you think are coming up that we'd be interested in?
So I had them look through, I served both as the spokesperson for labor and Jude Civ. I had them take a close look at each of the areas. And, you know, there's a few bills that you may say have some positive impact. We're seeing some things as far as apprenticeships and different things of that nature that the state's trying to fund, working with community colleges and advancing things of that nature. But to say we're going to lower costs somehow, or you know, there's something definitely on the move that's going to help lower taxes for people in the state. So far, nothing's moved yet. I'll just sort of leave it at that. I wish I could tell you otherwise. I really, you know, I know, but you know what? The toughest thing is coming on as your state representative and tell you that here's all the difficult things you're about to see. And by the way, the good part is, and there's not a whole lot to report there, but I know staffing is a huge issue for everyone across the state. And especially, I know TMA's been working on it for a while. They've been in touch with representatives from the association about this for a little while now, and trying to work on getting you additional help as far as, you know, people who are trained in the right way and can just get to work for you, and hopefully, you know, help all of you do which is provide goods for people.
Very good. Well, I don't have any more questions. Why don't we turn it over to Rich, and we'll take questions from the members, but really appreciate you giving us all that insight. Thank you.
Sure. If I could just share one other thing in addition to the apprenticeships, you know, we mentioned the workers' compensation bills. There have been some talks about whether there may be tax cuts at the end of the year or end of session coming up for the next year. Illinois actually, throughout the pandemic, while we haven't done as well as many other states, at least on a per capita basis, we've done fairly well in our revenue stream. And have actually been running balanced budgets. And there's talks about, can we give a tax cut because things have improved significantly? We've actually created a rainy day fund. It's probably not at the level anyone would like it, but it's moving and it's advancing. So we're thinking about tax cuts. And of course, we'd like all residents to share in tax cuts, but we also have looked to businesses because we know that businesses are the job creators. And if we have jobs and opportunities here in Illinois, we can get people here. And so what we're looking to do is get the tax cuts that we had negotiated for and got in 2019 with the Democrats reinstated, because basically what happened was we passed those, we got them through, and then they sort of yanked them off the table. Things such as the elimination of the business franchise tax. We're also, there were some others for building and expanding businesses. The R&D tax credit I know is coming up again, and it's something we're talking about and trying to advance so that we make certain that the manufacturers are able to take advantage of that. So there are a number of other things in the works where I'm hoping that if you have one of our other members on later in the session, they have something much more favorable to report on. Right now, we're sort of midstream, and those bigger issues are usually the ones that get wrapped up at the very end.
Sure. Thank you. That's
Sure.
Rich?
Thanks, David and Representative Ugaste. Now it's time for questions and answers with TMA members. For those of you who are on your computers, or if you're using the mobile app, you can type your question and submit it through the Q&A tab on the Zoom control panel. I'll read the questions and ask Representative Ugaste to answer them. In the meantime, I'll ask Representative Ugaste the first question that was pre-submitted by a TMA member. The question is, earlier this year, a Chicago senator announced he was drafting legislation to revive the progressive tax constitutional amendment that failed miserably in 2020. Do you think Democrats will actually bring a vote to put it on the ballot again? And if they do, what do you think the chances of passage will be? Representative?
Well, as far as the amendment advancing, I haven't heard of anything yet. As a matter of fact, I was talking with a senator I know, because it was, as they mentioned, a state senator that drafted it. And nothing's actually even moved in the Senate. They're through committees, but I don't think they've taken an actual vote, is what I'm hearing on anything on the floor. So that's a good sign if we're looking at not advancing another tax credit. I don't know what the likelihood of that is. I'd say it's probably not very likely. If the governor's talking about doing tax cuts, and we're trying to figure out where those might go if they actually happen and our revenue stream stays positive, it's going to be a real hard sell to get people to vote on a tax increase again. So, you know, it was I think they looked at it a little differently when they thought there wasn't much money in the budget or to spend within the state. But I think things have changed over the last few years where it'd be a much tougher sell to even get passed through the House and Senate. And to convince taxpayers when we're talking about positive revenue streams and a good, a balanced budget, that would, I think, be an even bigger haul for the people who are looking to advance it.
Well, that's certainly good news. Thanks, Representative.
Sure.
Again, if you'd like to ask a question, please type your question on the Q&A tab on the Zoom control panel. We do have another question that was submitted from a TMA member. The question is, the governor's first 4 years gave us a massive minimum wage hike, huge tax increases on businesses, and a costly clean energy bill that's already starting to limit energy supply in our state. What should TMA members be concerned about most from the governor and legislators the next 4 years? Representative?
Well, more of the same, I guess. I'm not certain. I think a lot of the big things are done. We keep working and trying to address those issues within the Clean Energy Jobs Act that we think detrimentally impact our state. Southern Illinois more than Northern Illinois, and I believe most of your members are probably Northern Illinois, are already experiencing problems with power that we aren't even seeing yet, and hopefully we'll never see. We'll avoid it. I did read where there was some indication that 2 of the nuclear plants that were scheduled to shut down maybe 5-10 years in the future, maybe in line for an upgrade, and that may be further deterred, which I think would be very beneficial to manufacturers within Illinois, and especially Northern Illinois, because I'm not certain if your members know this, because most of them, I think, again, are Northern Illinois, if not all of them. There's 2 different power grids within Illinois, and the power grid that operates in Northern Illinois has most of the nuclear generation within it. and it gets energy in a very different way than those down in Southern Illinois. They're part of a different power grid, and they can't even buy the energy from Northern Illinois. So it's a very different situation there. My hope is we can fix that. As far as other issues, other items, I haven't, again, seen anything big. It's more slow progression, change of things, these paid leave acts, which, they definitely add up. It's all the little stuff, I think, that adds up on business more than anything else, that is harming our business community and keeping us from expanding and growing as a state, as we should. I will say this, and if I can go off for just a minute, there's no reason Illinois shouldn't be growing in leaps and bounds. We have just about everything in the world going for us, except for how government addresses the way the states run, the way they're going to finance the state, and how they're going to dictate how business operates within the state. We're far too regulated. We have far too many taxes. We could still provide very good services, which I think all our people want. And I know all our businesses want, because we want we want good infrastructure. We want to be able to get our goods in and out and services in and out. But at the same time, there's a way to do it without charging our businesses and our residents this much money. We can do it. We just need to get there.
Thanks, Representative.
Sure.
Again, if you'd like to ask a question, please type your question on the Q&A tab on the Zoom control panel. All right, we do have another question submitted from a TMA member. The question is, as a legislator, again, in the super minority party, how do you get anything done legislatively for the people and businesses you represent?
So, unfortunately, that is becoming very much more difficult than it was at one point. This is unfortunately the third term we've been in the super minority within the House in a row, and that's making it, as I said, more difficult, because they're forgetting there's a likelihood that when our numbers do increase, they're going to have to work with us again, and things happen within people, with people trying to work with each other, and what's happened in the past. That aside, I will say this, unfortunately, while we are getting some bills through because they're just good bills and are helpful to the people of Illinois, we aren't seeing many. There were over, I want to say, over 570 bills that came out of the House of Representatives through committees and advancing to the floor. And of those 570 bills, only 71 were from Republicans. And they don't even have quite a 2-to-1 majority. And as far as their bills versus our bills that are allowed to advance, that's very sizable. We're not getting the amount we should, and we keep working on it. We keep talking to our colleagues across the aisle. There are some who are more like-minded with us than others, and trying to get them to help us advance these things. But it's a process, and it takes time.
Thanks, Representative. Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time and we have no more questions, so I think it's time to close. Representative Ugaste, do you have any closing thoughts for TMA members?
Sure. I want to thank all of you for inviting me today, for allowing me to talk to you, give you my thoughts and my insight as to what's happening. I hope this has been helpful to all of you. Whether you're in my district or out of my district, you have a question, you have an issue, something you'd like to see addressed, I'd be more than happy to help. I probably would connect you with your own legislator as well, but I'd be happy to work on the issue with you as well. The issues confronting the state are still very real, and we need to work on them. And unfortunately, the focus of the other party is far too great on issues I don't think most Illinoisans are focused on and want addressed by their General Assembly, by their legislators. So, if you have an opportunity, invite your legislator out to your business, show them what you do, show them what goes on, talk to them, let them know how things work, how things operate, and how the laws of Illinois and what we do down here in Springfield are impacting you in your business, your ability to run your business, grow, and help the people of the state of Illinois. Because let's face it, jobs are essential, and manufacturing, to me, is the most important industry we can have in this state, because everything else grows off of it. When you have a good manufacturing base and good manufacturing jobs, you're going to need service jobs in the area. You're going to need schools. You're going to need just about everything to help support that industry that's providing all those jobs. Everything seems to grow off of manufacturing. We're the transportation hub already, but we could become even bigger if we even manufactured more. So anyhow, invite a legislator out. We'd all be happy to come out. I know on our side of the aisle, at least, we talk about it all the time. We love coming out, seeing the business, finding out what's going on, and trying to do what we can to help all of you. We're constantly working on increasing our numbers so that we can, in fact, get more done and hopefully create a better business environment for the state of Illinois.
Thanks, Representative.
Absolutely.
Well, that will do it for today's virtual briefing discussing legislation that will impact TMA members in the spring session of the General Assembly. I want to thank Representative Dan Ugaste of Geneva for joining us today, along with TMA State Lobbyist David Curtin for leading a wonderful discussion. And of course, we want to thank all of our TMA members who took time out of their day today to join us. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day. Goodbye.
Thank you. Have a good day.